I found the files you uploaded. Would you like me to analyze or extract specific information from them to help craft your story topic? Or should I proceed with creating the compelling style story prompt based on the instructions you provided? Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find out that my wife was cheating on me. Honestly, the whole thing felt like a bad joke at first, like some twisted episode I'd see on TV. But it turned out to be real, and the shock hit me harder than I ever expected. The most unexpected part, it was right there in front of me, staring me in the face, and I didn't see it coming at all. And I had been married for about 5 years. We met in college, hit it off immediately, and by now I thought we knew everything about each other. She always seemed confident, a little bitchy sometimes, but sharp and clever. She was also pretty good at hiding her true feelings, at least that's what I thought. She was the type who'd lie through her teeth if it meant saving her own ass, and I got used to her little white lies over the years. At the beginning, things were normal. We had a decent life, good jobs, a nice apartment, and enough money to do what we wanted. But over the past few months, I'd noticed some weird shifts. She started coming home late more often, claiming it was work, but I could tell she was hiding something. Her phone buzzed constantly, and she'd quickly hide it when I came near. She also started spending more money, little things at first, then bigger ones like expensive dinners and trips she insisted were business meetings. I didn't think much of it at first, but the gut feeling kept gnawing at me. One night I decided to check her phone. It wasn't sneaky. I had a right to know what was going on. I knew she'd probably deny everything, but I needed proof. I grabbed her phone while she was in the shower. That's when I saw it, messages. Not just innocent text, but flirtatious, suggestive messages. With some guy named Jake. They were talking about meeting up, about sex, about how much they both wanted each other. I saw her call him babe once. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more messages. She was lying, hiding, cheating. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept reading. The exchanges went on for weeks, maybe months. She'd meet him late at night, sometimes at hotels, and always lie about where she was. I found receipts from restaurants, a hotel bill, even a lingerie store bill, stuff she never even tried to hide. It all hit me like a punch in the gut. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with some guy who she claimed was just a friend. But the texts told a different story entirely. I felt sick, angry, betrayed. I couldn't believe I'd been blind this whole time. I was furious at her for lying and for sneaking around. But I was also hurt. Deep down, I felt like I'd lost part of myself. How could she do this? After all we'd been through, after all the promises. I sat there on the couch, staring at her messages, trying to process what I'd just discovered. It was like my world was crashing down around me, and I didn't know what to do next. The next day, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I had to confront her, but I also needed a plan. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying everything I'd found out, trying to figure out how to handle it without losing my mind. I wasn't the type to explode and yell. I needed to be strategic. But inside I was seething. Every betrayal, every lie, it all burned inside me. When woke up that morning, she was her usual bitchy self, flipping her hair, acting like everything was fine. She was already trying to brush off the earlier tension with her typical sarcasm. I kept my cool, pretending I didn't know about the messages. We had breakfast and she was trying to be normal, but I could see her nervous glances, her subtle fidgeting. She was hiding something, and I knew it. I just didn't know how bad it was yet. Finally, I decided it was time to get straight to the point. I told her I knew about the messages, about Jake, about everything. Her reaction. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and called me paranoid. "You're overreacting as usual," she snapped. "It's nothing. You're just insecure and you always jump to conclusions." That's when I saw the bitchy smirk she put on, like she was proud of her lies, her little secret. But I wasn't buying it anymore. She started spinning stories, saying she was just talking to an old friend, that it was innocent, that I was jealous and paranoid. She everything, even though I had the proof right there on her phone. It was like talking to a wall. I knew she was lying, but what really pissed me off was how she was trying to make me doubt myself, make me feel like I was crazy. That's classic. She's good at twisting things, making herself the victim, even when she's the one in the wrong. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she'd betrayed me so blatantly, and sadness because I still loved her, at least for a moment. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I kept my composure. I told her I needed some time to think, that I was going to just brush this off. She rolled her eyes, said I was overreacting again, and stormed out of the room. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her keep lying, keep pretending everything was fine. I started planning my next move. I needed to know how deep this went, how many lies she had told, and what her real motives were. I also needed to decide if I could forgive her or if I had to cut ties completely. But one thing was clear: she wasn't going to get away with this. Not without consequences. I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done in a way that she wouldn't forget. I just didn't know how yet. Over the next few days, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Every time I saw her, I felt this burning anger mixed with disappointment. I started noticing more signs. She was acting more distant, hiding her phone even more, and spending money like crazy on things she insisted we needed. But I knew were just her cover stories for her secret life. I was sick of being played. I decided I had to take control, so I dug deeper into her financials, bank accounts, and social media. I needed concrete evidence and a clear picture of how far she'd gone. One night I followed her. It was risky, but I needed to see where she was going, who she was with. She told me she was working late, but I caught her sneaking out after midnight. I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. She met a guy outside, Jake, I assumed, and they went inside together. I sat in my car nearby, heart pounding. I watched them go in, holding hands, laughing like a couple on a date. That was the moment I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. This was real and was fully committed to her lies and her affair. The next day I confronted her again. This time I didn't hold back. I laid everything out: her messages, the hotel bill, the receipts. She tried to deny it, said I was stalking her, accused me of being insecure. But I had enough. I told her I knew she was cheating, that I had proof, and that I wasn't going to stand for it anymore. Her reaction: she snapped. She called me controlling, accused me of being paranoid, and started crying. Fake tears, I could tell. She played the victim, as always, but I was beyond caring about her sob story. I felt a strange calm, like I'd already made up my mind. I told her I was done if she didn't come clean, that I wasn't going to be a fool anymore, living in her lies. She looked at me with her bitchy smirk and said, "You're overreacting. You always do this. You're just jealous because I still look good and get attention. Maybe you should get a job and stop being so insecure." That was her way of twisting everything: blame me, make me feel guilty, pretend she was the victim. But I wasn't buying it. I knew the truth now, and I was furious. That night I stayed up, thinking about what to do next. I knew I had to be strategic. I couldn't just blow up and lose everything, even though part of me desperately wanted to. I decided I'd gather more evidence, find out how long she'd been doing this, and then decide whether to confront her publicly or handle it privately. I also started thinking about her money: how much she'd spent, how much she'd hidden, what she was trying to protect. I realized I needed to take control of the situation, not just for myself, but to make her realize I wasn't a fool. I was done being played. It was time for her to see she couldn't keep lying and cheating without consequences. In the days that followed, I didn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I started digging even deeper. I went through her bank statements, looked at her credit card bills, anything I could find. I wanted to know exactly how much she'd been spending on Jake, on hotels, on dinners, on lingerie, and everything else she'd hidden from me. The numbers were staggering. She blown thousands in just a few months, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. It made me sick to think how much she'd lied, how she'd been living this double life, and how she'd managed to keep it all secret for so long. One thing I noticed was how she was funneling money into secret accounts, accounts I didn't even know she'd set up. I felt a mix of rage and helplessness. How many lies had I missed? How much of our life together was just a facade? I knew I had to do something, but I also wanted to make her pay for all the betrayals, for how she'd made me feel like a fool. That evening, I decided to confront her again, but this time I had a plan. I told her I knew everything about her affair, her secret accounts, her spending. She tried to deny it, saying I was paranoid, that I was making things up. I pulled out the bank statements and receipts I'd collected and laid them on the table. Her face went pale for a second, then she scoffed and tried to brush it off. "You're crazy," she hissed. "You don't know what you're talking about. I can do whatever I want." I was beyond caring about her protests. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was going to take control of the situation. I also made it clear that I wasn't going to let her keep living in her fantasy world. I was going to make her see that her actions had consequences. I told her I was planning to hire someone, an investigator, to find out exactly how deep her deception went. She tried to act innocent, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. She knew I was serious. That night I stayed up late drafting a plan. I was going to expose everything, her affair, her secret accounts, her spending habits. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I also decided I'd confront her family, tell them what she'd been doing, and see if they'd help me. I was sick of being played for a fool. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand that she couldn't keep lying without facing serious consequences. Every step I took felt like a small victory, like I was reclaiming some part of myself that she'd tried to destroy. But I knew the real storm was coming. She was still in denial, still pretending everything was fine. But I was done pretending, too. I was ready to take back control of my life and make her see that I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. The next move was on her, and I was prepared for whatever came next. The confrontation I planned was set for the next evening. I knew I had to be careful, strategic. I wanted her to realize I wasn't bluffing, that I had everything documented, and that I was serious about ending this charade. I prepared myself mentally, knowing that once I showed her everything, there would be no turning back. She could deny, lie, or try to manipulate, but I had the proof, and I was determined to make her face the consequences. When she got home that night, she was her usual bitchy self, throwing her attitude around, acting like she was the queen of the world. She didn't suspect a thing. I kept my cool and waited until she was settled in. Then I pulled out the bank statements, receipts, and a detailed timeline of her secret life. I laid it all out on the table, watching her face turn pale as she realized I knew everything. Her reaction. She tried to deny everything, of course. "This is bullshit," she snapped, grabbing the papers and shoving them away. "You're just jealous, insecure, and paranoid. You're ruining everything for no reason." But I wasn't buying her act anymore. I told her I'd had enough of her lies. I said that I was done playing her game and that she was going to face the fallout. She started crying, fake tears rolling down her cheeks, more manipulation than genuine emotion. She begged me to stop, said she'd do anything to fix it, but I knew better. I told her I wasn't interested in her apologies or her sob stories. I told her I was going to expose her to her family, to her friends, and to everyone she cared about. I said that her perfect image was shattered, and I wasn't going to let her rebuild it anymore. That's when she finally cracked. She screamed at me, calling me controlling, jealous, and pathetic. She told me I was destroying our marriage over some stupid messages and a few bills. But the truth was, I was destroying her lies, her deceit, and her manipulations. I told her I was done being played, that I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done, one way or another. After that night, she became even more distant. She tried to act normal, but I could see the cracks in her facade. I'd made it clear I was serious, and I knew she was starting to realize that her perfect little world was crumbling. I started planning my next move, whether to end it all, to confront her family, or to cut her out entirely. I wasn't sure what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing. She'd pushed me to the edge, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not anymore. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I kept my distance from, watching her carefully, waiting for her next move. She tried to act normal, but I could see the nervousness behind her bitchy facade. She was scared, and honestly, I enjoyed watching her squirm. I knew I had the upper hand now, with all the evidence laid bare. Her lies had been exposed and she couldn't spin her way out of this one. I finally made the decision to confront her family. I called her parents and told them everything. The affair, her secret accounts, her spending, the lies. Her mother was furious, but her father was quiet, listening carefully. I told them I didn't want to destroy her life, but I couldn't keep living in this betrayal. I asked them to help me decide what to do next. They urged me to think carefully, but I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who had lied so blatantly. That weekend, I packed my things. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also knew I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies anymore. When I told her I was leaving, she begged, cried, even tried to manipulate me into staying. But I was done. I told her I'd never trust her again, that she'd broken everything between us. I walked out the door, leaving her there, furious and crying. In the aftermath, I realized how much this had changed me. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. I also learned that revenge, when done right, can be a way to reclaim your dignity. I don't regret exposing her. It hurt at first, but it was necessary. I've started rebuilding my life, focused on myself, on healing. Looking back, I wish I could say I gained some grand insight or that I found peace. Honestly, I still feel the sting of betrayal. But I also feel relief. Relief that I finally took control, that I stood up for myself. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, gather your proof, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve your trust. Because in the end, your happiness is worth more than any lie or betrayal.